Welcome to the Sound Meets Sound podcast. My guest today is Eki Shola, and we're talking about her new album, Kaeru. So, and you've been going to Japan?
Yeah, like every month.
Wow, that's so cool. How did that start?
20 years ago, I was a medical student and I did an exchange program at Kaeru University. So it was like for 3 weeks, I studied traditional Chinese medicine in Japan. And I got to travel a little bit in Kyoto, Hakone, and like I've traveled quite a bit. And like this is the one place where I was like, I love it here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cried. I didn't want to come back.
Oh.
And like nowhere had ever kind of touched me that much. And so I remember saying one day I have to come back here and live. I don't know how. So it's like fast forward 20 years.
Right.
And like opportunities have been happening. So
wow. That's so cool.
I know. Yeah. So I love it. I love it in Japan.
That is, that's so awesome. Especially that it's tied to your previous medical life. Although I guess you're still doing medical stuff, or is it just...
So this is the crazy thing. So like 20 years later, right? So after medical school, I worked for 5 years in a 8 to 5 clinic. And then I started for 1 year. And then I changed over working as an independent contractor because it gave me more flexibility. And that clinic, along with my house, burned down in 2017.
Right.
So then I started working for another company, and I was commuting to San Francisco, which is crazy commute. But I've been with them from 2017, and they have an international branch. So I didn't know that at the time. So then COVID comes around, right? Everything's shut down, borders are shut down. And I would call them like every few months, is Japan open? Is Japan open? Finally, it opened October 2022. And that's when I went. So I went back to Japan for medicine and working as a physician there. And then I'm like, well, while I'm here, I'm going to totally check out the music scene. And so I just kind of looked on Google, checked out local venues who's playing. And then that's how it all started. And it was like one guy he's a venue owner in Hiroshima, because I don't speak Japanese. And I didn't know anyone there. Mm-hmm. And through this one gentleman connected me to one other person, to other people. And it's just been this huge ripple effect.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing that, those two parts of your lives like fed each other.
Yeah, they totally did. And like Meg, for a long while, I kept trying to separate the two. Because I'm like, okay, you got to be a professional doctor and the musician, and there's no intersection. And then people would tell me, no, you're both. They connect.
Right.
So once I stopped fighting that, then it was just like, crazy. And get this week, the album I just recorded at, I was in a music studio that used to be a hospital.
I want to talk about the album because I listened to it through last night, and it was, I mean, obviously it's gorgeous, and it was so just enjoyable to listen to, but it was interesting. It felt like you had found a new like direction to go. It was, not hugely different, but it definitely felt like different from your last like 2 or 3 like EPs or albums. So I just wanted to talk about like that creation process and like musically as an artist, like what happened for you between your last release and this one.
Right. I think that the biggest was, I thought I knew what was going to go on this album, and then I had the opportunity to record in Japan, and I was just like, all right, scratch 50% of this. We're starting over. And it was literally writing, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs a few days before going to Japan. So just having these rough sketches. So that was different. And the biggest difference is recording with actual musicians, which I'd never done before in an album.
Oh.
So yeah, so all before my prior albums have just been me solo album, doing the beats, cello, keyboards, all of that. But I was so inspired by the music scene in Japan. I wanted to somehow collaborate with local artists. And there's a different feel when you have live instrumentation, in your music, right? And I knew it would be a challenge for me too, to kind of think outside the box in that way, and to present these pieces that are not really traditional music, but I wanted to hear what the other artists' interpretations were. And I also wanted to feature traditional Japanese and Asian instruments too.
Life is short. Remember, like I told ya, don't care no more. Don't care no more.
I feel like this album compared to the last one, a little bit more experimental in the sound palette.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
I was really. It was so compelling how seamless the like interweaving of the Japanese style and just your musicness. It all came out very Eki Shola, even though it was clearly, there was this other influence happening. It just felt very seamless. Yeah. So.
And I grappled with that because next time I'm like, I don't want it to be so much Eki Shola. It's all about Eki Shola, but like, what about something else? Right. Yeah. So it's always helpful to hear outside perspectives, because when you're in that creation mode, you kind of get in this bubble, and yeah. So maybe for the album number 6, it will be less.
Well, what's interesting is how even when we go down different roads and work with musicians or a different style, we always retain our and it's like for me, I was like, oh, I got to make something that's less like my Death of Codes project, but it was like, that's gonna be in everything because that's me,
yeah.
And so for me, like, I just the top half of the album, there isn't a ton of vocals as far as I remember. I feel like the vocals become more and more prominent later on, and I was like, so when I first started listening, I was like, man, I hope we're gonna get some of Eki's vocals, because we both, our music is very vocal centered. Like that's the Eki Shola-ness of it, that you want to get out of an Eki Shola album. So yeah, I did want to ask about how you collaborated with the live musicians. Like, what did you
Yeah.
bring to them, and
Right.
how did that all work?
Right. So it's three of them. So Hidenori Sugita-san was a drummer.
Mhm.
And so I shared my tracks with him with the drum beat that I had already. And I said to him, I love drum machines, but I want this to be your rendition. And this is kind of just a guide. And so I think at first he was just, because I think he was trying to match all the patterns that I was playing, and he was doing a really good job. But then I was like, but then there would be no use for you. Like, what's the point? I could just stick with my drum. So I said, make it yours. Just do what you want. And like, let me tell you, at the end of each recording session, he sweated. He got so into it. And he just brought a whole different level that I was just so excited. And some of it, he plays in different bands, and some of them are, I think, rock. So I feel like some of the songs have a rock influence to it. Listening back, he was able to capture within a bunch of the songs it's almost like in some of the songs there's like three movements. I kind of shift a lot within a song, and so there's like three different drum patterns in one song. And so I loved what he did. I think he injected his energy beautifully and just flipped the song around for me. So that was the drummer. And then the Mongolian Marimkar player, Tatsuya Okabayashi-san, I gave him the song and I said, just improvise. And he was like, really? Because that's, and I said, yeah, just do you. And same with the shamisen player, Uma Evina-san. And she played shakuhachi, which is a Japanese flute also. And I said, one of the songs was for her. It's called For You. And I told her that, and like, she just went all over on it. And it sounds like this bluesy, Japanesey, soulful song. All told me it was very different than the way they normally play or create, but they appreciated the challenge. And it, to me, it just came out beautifully. And this is all done through Google Translate mainly, and through
wow,
and through Hiroshi Kobayashi, who owns the studio. So he did a lot of the translating too when he was around. But other than that,
that's amazing. Well, yeah, because it's such a cohesive album, and especially there were some tracks where I was like, it sounded like a group that had been improvising together for a long time, and that could feed off each other's vibes. So that's really amazing to hear how that process was. Google Translate.
Right. And they recorded separately. We weren't all together. because everyone's schedules couldn't fit. So we kind of, we did it all. We weren't able to all play together.
Wow. That's really amazing. Yeah. Especially that opening track. It sounds like something I've heard, on stage before. It's just a group that knows them well, each other well. What was that instrument you said? The Mongolian?
Morin Kerr. So it's sort of a trapezoid box with, I forget how many strings, maybe 2 or 3, and it has this beautiful carving of a horse at the head, and he plays it with a bow. Okay. And when you play it, I don't know the theory of the scale, but it's sort of microtones or micro pitches. And so hard to describe, but when he plays it, it reminds me of like wind rushing over leaves. And then when you can hear the bowings, like the touch of the bow on the string. And I wanted to keep that in the mix. And it's such a gorgeous sound. And I think there's different types. So his is more of a bass sound. Yes. So, I love the opening, the sound that he has on that.
That's that tactile, lovely sound. Yeah.
Yes. You're hearing the sound, but you're hearing it being produced at the same time.
Yeah.
And
like you said with the drummer, like that's the value that's coming with not just creating it all yourself, like in the computer or whatever. Like you've got these live musicians bring out the things they bring.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, there's no way I could reproduce that electronically. Yeah.
I'm super impressed because that's something that intimidates me, is to take like the Death of Codes ideas and like take them to other musicians and trust them and trust that they won't be like, well, what's this?
Right. It is nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
It is nerve-wracking. Maybe not knowing the language may have helped with lessening the intimidation.
I could see that being helpful. How long were you in the recording studio? How many days?
Yeah, so the first time I came in March, and I think I was only in the studio maybe 3 days, I think, with the drummer. And so I was just going to do an EP of like 4 songs. But after that session with the drummer, I was like, oh no, this has to be an album. I have to come back. So then I came back a few months after, and then that's when we did the tracking with the 2-string players and did more songs. So yeah.
Wow. So
probably like a total of 5-6 days for it all. And then I did the vocals and I did the bass, synth bass, and all of that, keyboards before at home.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So then, you were still doing double, triple duty on the album.
Yes. Craziness. And then I recorded most of the vocals in the studio also.
Oh, okay.
While I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that as a vocalist? I mean, have you done much of that before where you work with an engineer instead of recording yourself?
Yes, and it's nerve-wracking, Meg. I prefer to do it in the comfort of my studio when no one's around. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if I'll get used to that. And to be honest, I think there was one song I even kept the old vocals. I mean, I like using the microphone on my MacBook. Like I have a great microphone, professional mic is great, but I love the mic, on the Mac.
I've done that too.
Have you?
Real talk.
Yeah.
It's like not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like then I don't have to hook up my interface and all that stuff. Yeah, I've worked with an engineer a few times as a vocalist, and it's like I could see the benefits, but also I just feel freer when I'm doing it myself.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel less uninhibited for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. The other aspect, the thing that is part of the Eki Shola-ness, and it feels cohesive with your past work, is it's mixed and I assume mastered in a really specific, effective way.
Grow with me, go through the motions, same roles played and repeat stories told. No more roads to turn down. Dead end can poison you and let it make you bold. Stay with me, if it's fun.
Mixing and mastering different for this. How has it worked for you in the past? I don't actually know.
It was very difficult because for me, because I've never mixed live instruments before. And so a lot of it, you also have to know about how to mic things effectively, so you're not fighting with it in the mixing stage. So there were some learning lessons. For instance, a few of the songs, a cajon was used instead of a kick. Mm-hmm. And in the studio, it sounded great. But with the cajon, it's missing sort of those bassy tones of the kick drum. So in the mix, it was really hard. And I was really close to just turning them over to a sound engineer, as I've been tempted to do in the past. But to walk someone through what it is you're hearing and what you want it to sound like, it's near impossible. I don't know how. It's too much. Yeah. I drive them up the wall, right? Because I know what it needs to sound like. And so... for instance, when an engineer asks me, well, can you give me a reference mix? There is none. Yeah. You're not going to find it. So it's going to sound different, And I did struggle with that. My dad's a musician, and I remember calling. I was like, Dad, this is like the 9th version of just the first song. He's like, well, are you trying to mix it to a traditional standard? Because it's not traditional. I was like, you're right. So it's still hard, and it's learning. Mm-hmm. Every album, I'm learning. Yeah.
I feel like any truthful engineer is going to say, like, every mix you're learning something new. So
pretty much.
Yeah. So have you always then mixed your own music?
I'm not the very first album. So I worked with a sound engineer with her, and she was great, very patient. Because I was like, can you just change it? Well, how about this? And then after that, I was like, okay, I need to take a class and learn. The rest of the albums I have mixed. And I think that the challenge for me is that I need to retain the dynamics, but then you lose out on volume, right? And that's the trick. Yeah. but I do not want to crunch my music into, one fat, file. It has to, I want the listen to hear the changes.
Yeah.
So typically my mixes or my masters come out softer than traditional music played.
Well, yeah, that's what I've always been impressed, and especially this last album, is that you retain the dynamics, but it's still very forward, because I've heard similar types of music and they retain the dynamics, but it's like you have to crank up the volume to hear everything.
Yes. Right.
So
right.
I feel like you strike, and yeah, major kudos to you for, again, I've mixed live instruments and it was just a disaster because it was so hard.
Right? And then there's a lot of, they can be bleed between other instruments if you're in more than one room, and it's all of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I guess the strategies and, like we were saying, the practice of it changes. That's why, because I used to wonder, why do, like, let's say these other artists, they'll release new mastered projects, right? Yeah. And I'd be like, why? Why not just keep making new ones? But now I get it. I mean, things change, techniques change, or your abilities change. So maybe one day I'll go back and remaster the prior ones. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my dream. Because my early Death of Code stuff, like, is, you in 10 years, you learn just like a metric ton of information about sound.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you said you took a class on mixing, but then most of it's just been learning as you do your own stuff.
Yes, I took, we have a community college class, community colleges bias, which is really great. So I took like an Ableton class and then audio recording, and that covered some mixing, but you just have to do it, right? Right. Trial and error.
Fractionated, dislocated, scapegoated by you. Power dissolved for all but the mighty few. Dollars fix woes for a second, but restlessness lingers.
Yeah, especially when you're doing your own music and you're doing that process of, like, what I hear, getting that to come out of the machine.
Exactly. I think I've worked with, I think it was the second album, I did have someone else mix it. And what was helpful was for us to sit down together, and we learned both ways, through that process. So that was really helpful. Yeah.
Do you do anything with mastering, like, obviously to get the volume up, or is it mixing and mastering kind of bleed into each other?
This time round, and I think the last album, I did the mastering myself. Yes. Because again, I'm avoiding that crunchy sound that sometimes can happen when the limiter gets cranked up for the compressor. Like, I have a few singles out there. I won't say the names, and I play them back now, and I'm just like,
I know.
Correct.
I know, it's like you don't want to name names because I'm sure you have the same thing where it's like, I'll have a track that I'm like, oh man, like, what was I thinking?
Right.
But it still gets played on Bandcamp. Right. So it's like, some people are still enjoying, so I'm not going to, like, bad.
Leave it alone. Yep, exactly.
So do you use Ableton?
I do. Like, I've tried Pro Tools, but I'm like, let me just stick with what I know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know
I'd
that
love to do Ableton someday. I do
what
Studio
is
One because
Studio One?
yeah, it had the best free version. Because when I started doing this, I was skint. It was just
Yes.
completely broke.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need a free version, and then
Yeah.
I just stuck with it. Now I could afford
Oh,
Ableton, but now I'm just like, I know
right.
this. So,
Yeah.
but well, yeah, I know your background, but for
Uh,
or some of your background, but for the purposes of this podcast, could you go into like your musical background
mhm.
and how you came to music and medicine, honestly, because they seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I grew up in London. I was born in London. Our parents were both musicians, and it was me, my brother, and sister. So we all took piano. Our mom was pianist, and then we also branched out and did a stringed instrument later on. So music was always, at home in the background, classical, folk, rock, everything but jazz.
Wow.
And I know, and not much soul. I mean, it was Bob Dylan, it was um what's that guy's name who sings Free Fallin'? Oh gosh.
Oh, Tom Petty?
Tom Petty. Yeah. Thank you. Steve Winwood, Joan Armatrading. So that was the kind of music that my dad always played. And it wasn't until we moved from London to New York in '87, and then went to college upstate New York, and I think it was maybe the final year before graduating, I mustered up the courage to audition for the Cornell Jazz Ensemble. And,
Cool.
I nearly had a heart attack. They were giving out the sheet music. I couldn't read it because it was all like in, the G seventh diminished
Yes.
flat, whatever. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So I just winged the whole thing and just improvised by ear.
Wow.
So needless to say, I did not get the piano part, but my professor put me on vibraphones.
Mm-hmm.
So I never played that before. He gives me 4 mallets, two in each hand. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And I got to figure out how to play it. So every rehearsal was just like anxiety. I mean, my peers were like brilliant musicians. Like they've been playing jazz, and I was just like imposter syndrome. I don't belong here. And so it was really hard. But that professor he reached out to me. We connected a few years ago. And and he invited me to perform with this ensemble at UC Santa Cruz. And it was this amazing free jazz experimental piece. And it was a collaboration with the dancer. It was phenomenal. I was like, what do I do? 20 plus years and here we are. But I got it. Then I understood the jazz at that point, and it was awesome. It was really fun.
Where's my home? Yeah. Searching all over the globe.
So that was it. And, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was 5, probably from, I was hospitalized when I was a kid and I was sick. They didn't know what it was, but it was asthma at the time. And I remember just having such a positive experience, like when the doctors would come through and round. And I was like, and I looked forward to that. So I think that was really the very first impressionable experience. And so, from then on, it was just like, all right, I'm going to be a doctor. So became a doctor. And then it was, 11, my daughter was just born, my second child. And within 2 weeks, I was flying out to New York with her to be with my mom, who had to have surgery and found out that she had cancer.
Oh.
And so it was 6 months of us going back and forth, being with her. And it was extremely difficult, but also just so thankful that I had that time with her. And when she passed, my family and I were planning her memorial, and we were like in my childhood bedroom, and had my old Yamaha keyboard, and I pulled that out. My brother got his bass, my sister had her violin, and my dad played percussion, and we jammed for about a couple of hours, and it was just incredibly cathartic. And that was the moment I was like, I have to do music.
Wow.
And like, it was after that, Meg, music. And I went back to California, went back to work, and just started writing for myself. And then a couple of years later, I was like, oh, I think I have enough for an album. Maybe I should put one out. I don't know how to put out an album. So, learning all that.
Something else.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, but nobody's going to know about it if I don't perform. So then it was just like, now I got to get over stage fright and learn that. And here we are today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is, I knew most of that story already, but when hearing you tell it like that and linear progression, it's pretty amazing.
I would never have anticipated doing music professionally. Would never have seen that coming at all. Yeah.
That's interesting. And yet you grew up doing
I know.
You clearly had enough talent that someone just put you behind a vibraphone, even though you've never played it before. That's amazing.
Totally.
And I love the vibraphone. It's such a
beautiful sound, right?
Yeah. It's like quintessential jazz sound too.
Yes. True.
Yeah. So that's something I'm very envious of with you, is how much you've played out. You've performed your music live. I'm really impressed with that.
Yeah.
I know it's a hustle. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the business side, like for this album, for example, like you're gonna release it on Bandcamp, I assume, but do you do digital distribution? Do you have plans to perform it? And how would you do that without the original musicians and all that?
Trying to work. I'm having some sleepless nights about that. So I mean, it will be on digital streaming. I kind of grappled with that financially, like doesn't really make sense, but that's kind of the way people hear your music, right? But Bandcamp is good. I will be doing a tour in Japan, but I'll be performing solo for that mainly. But there will be an actual album release event, which we're planning right now. And I'm hoping that three of us, one gentleman is touring himself, the Mongolian Morin-Kur player, but I'm hoping that we'll have a trio where we can perform live on October 13th. And then once I return back to the States, I'll have several radio and podcast album listening events here. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Bandcamp just started that listening party thing.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Exactly. And so October 6th is Bandcamp Friday. Right. So that's why I'm doing it on that day. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Bandcamp's awesome.
I know.
I connect with people on there, like, whoever buys my music, I email them and try to connect with them. And I've had some collaborations that way. Like in Tokyo, I got to collaborate with a DJ there
Oh, cool.
at a show. So it's a great platform.
Yeah, total
What do you
shout
think?
out to Bandcamp. It's
Yeah.
like the only service out there that isn't completely predatory
I know.
and just
I
like
know.
squeezing musicians
Right.
dry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to pay to put your music up.
Exactly. Exactly. And it covers just diverse genres of
Yeah.
artists. You know, you can find your niche. Is it niche? 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 I don't know.
I have heard it every way. Niche. I guess the last question, and then obviously if you have anything you want to talk about. But something I've really struggled with music that I've recorded mostly of my own and in my house on my computer is making a live version of that, like translating the recorded thing into a live thing, which it used to be the opposite. You have the live thing and you make it a record.
Right.
So how do you, and this is a completely selfish question, but how do you approach that?
It is a struggle, Meg, because even like at the conception of a song, when I'm writing something, I'm already worried about how am I going to perform it. So it's like, okay, just don't worry about that. You'll figure it out later. Because that can limit you. I found that it can limit me, right? Because I'm like, I can't recreate this. I'm like, whatever, just play it and know that there'll somehow be a different rendition. So I'll have the actual sound recording. Then from that, I'll use that to create an actual version of when I'll perform it. And then that will have a different version based on if I'm playing with a live drummer, right? So I'll pull out the drums or add something different. So it's like, about 2-3 versions of the songs. But, at the end of the day, people just care about connecting with you and the music when I'm playing. That's kind of the bottom line. It's like, I think I overthought this. It's the way music makes someone feel that has them connecting to it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And not afraid to hope the love will win. Not afraid to hope the good of the rules. Scared to feel the pain, scared to not feel it all. Not afraid to hope the love will win. Not afraid to hope the good overrules. Scared to feel the pain, scared to not feel it all. Not afraid to feel a bondage of the mind.
And I try to think of this like each and every one of us as artists have a gift. And we're sharing it. We're just sharing it with the world and with the hopes that it helps someone, connects with someone. And that's the joy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely what I miss about performing is just immediately that connection with people.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
But sometimes you wear different hats, right? I mean, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to perform. I just want to be in the studio and just make music. And I can just be a bedroom producer.
Yeah. It's exhausting wearing all those hats and and having a job,
Yes.
like making money and health insurance.
Right.
But it's also, performing live is its own kind of exhausting thing because the actual act is very draining. It's exhilarating in the moment, and then after you just crash.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I had a church gig for many, many years, and I would get home from playing a lot of music on Sunday morning, and I would just sleep for like an hour and a half. So,
yeah. Gracie, shush. Yeah.
But Yeah, but also, like, I admire you for going out and getting the gigs. Like, maybe you were getting these offered to you at this point, but like just getting people to let you play live is hard.
It is hard, and I'm super grateful even with just Japan, because I'm a foreigner, you know. They don't know me. There's no connections, and it's like they almost feel like they're taking a risk, you know, but
Right.
they're willing to, which is I truly appreciate it, because I'm breaking into completely new territory.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Well, that's super cool. Is there anything you wanted to talk about in the podcast that we haven't talked about yet? Or...
Ooh. We've covered a lot. I
got a lot out of you.
You did. Oh my God, you did. The only thing I just wanted to add is just that the title of the album is Kaeru, which means to return home. And I just wanted to share that. Yeah, ever since I left England and moved to the States, I've never really felt like I fitted in anywhere, whether that's me living in New York, Boston, California. It's like something's off, something's missing. And I didn't know if it was me or my surroundings. And so this album reflects sort of this journey of trying to figure out where home is, especially when literally it's been burned out from under you physically, right? But then through these journeys, through recording in Japan, seeing how music connects across ethnicity and culture and language barriers, the process itself has shown me where home is, which is really within. And also for me personally, Japan. That's where I feel the most at peace there. And I think that's the main, it sounds cliche, but just over and over the beauty of music to be this universal language and connector, regardless of what we've all endeavored or what we all believe in. The power of that is the best medicine ever, you know? So this album was as much sort of as a soul searching as it was also the therapy, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. I appreciate that explanation of the title. It's sometimes I feel like it's not like for people that don't have that like urge to make music. I'm just like, man, what would I do without that?
Right.
Because that's so helpful, so crucial, finding home within yourself. And music just really facilitates that.
It totally does.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when you don't want to make music. You don't want to practice. Like, oh gosh.
Definitely. Absolutely.
You know? And it's like sometimes for like a dry spell, I don't know if this happens to you, but you're like, do I even remember how to play?
Oh, and then, like, I've had that so many times.
Scary.
Because we both started as children, in the decades that I've been making music.
Right.
And how many times I felt like I'm just starting over.
I know. I know.
I've been doing this for so long. Oh, man. Well, This was great. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning.
Thank you.
Someday I'll figure it out. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's so nice to get to finally talk to you.
I know.
It's so good.
Likewise.
So,
Likewise.
After all these years of internet.
Yeah.
We don't adhere to invisibility. Our intentions rooted within unity. We've always been here, you just choose not to see. Many fears behind the possibility, embolden yourself and commit to audacity. What power you relinquish and let be. Our identity is not your call for visibility, because we always were and will be. We understand the past, challenge the present, and mold the future to create a true we. Using our creativity to help heal humanity. Despite centuries of subjugation and deep brutality, we stand with camaraderie and resistivity. For we are free. We are free.